Hey, IT Nation, Sean Lardo here. Actually, with my first official solo episode with Matt Topper for the Wise Up podcast. I'm super excited about this. So, Matt, thank you for bringing me into your fold and making you the co-host with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Sean. And it's not only because we couldn't find anyone else to come on.
Well, I did see the long list of one person on there, so I really appreciate that I took first in one. However, that's just so everybody knows what this series is about is a way, the ability for us to start to spread the word and educate on various factors of business, education, not just business but technologies, good stories about how people got there, what the most important factors in their life were. Because this is not just a tech podcast. This is an IT Nation community podcast because our community is so vast. We want to make sure people are constantly getting content to help them improve. And in this case, this is a great episode for this that we're going to go through, but not only their business, but their personal. So professionally and personal, improve their lives, steps they can take. So there should be really good takeaways from all of our guests that we bring on.
Yeah, exactly. It's not one of those vendor showcases. It's not one of those pay-to-play podcasts. It's you can come on and you can provide good, actionable value that you can take back to your business. That's the point.
Absolutely. And not just business, but home life as well, I feel like.
Yes.
I think like one of the challenges that I experienced, a lot of other people experienced, is when we came out of the year of COVID, because people had went to work remote for the first time. A lot of them, I know I've been doing it for a long time before that. You have a hard time separating the separation of church and state from business to professional to personal, right? And there was no end date to their workday.
Yeah, you really do. And even if you have a home office, right? Yes, there's some of that. You walk into the door and now you're at work, but it's not the same. Like you feel like you're always on, and it's very hard to get out of that mindset.
Absolutely. And that actually takes us to our guest for today, even. I think this is why it's so perfect. This guy I mean, I have my own titles for him, honestly. He is the VP of Evangelism with IT Nation, founder of HTG, which is now Evolve, uh, essentially the godfather of MSPs and actually work-life balance. Big topics, big things he always talked about, and to me, and I mean, I'd eventually say hundreds of thousands at this point of people across the globe is talking about their legacy planning, because that is a huge, huge thing. And I want to make sure we do address legacy plan as we go, because it's not just people's private businesses. It's that back to that personal piece too. But and he is way older than me, which makes me even happier. I've watched him in action. He was much slower than I do, and that makes me happy. But without further ado, I do want to bring on our guest. I want to bring on Arlin Sorensen.
Thanks, Sean.
You know what, Arlin? You're welcome. You deserved every bit of it and then some.
Yeah. Well, the thing that surprised me in the intro was you didn't mention you were going to pay me for this episode.
Checks in the mail.
Just sit
the
there.
Mail's not reliable, though.
Just sit there and wait for that check to come in. It's on its way. I promise you. And and I pay you with adoration and love, Arlin.
I so appreciate that.
Does that pay the bills, Arlin?
Matt, what do you want to talk about?
So we used to have this new host for the podcast, Sean, and episode 1 just went off the rails.
I think it's going well so far. And to Matt, to be clear, I owe Arlin one because, one time I was really nice and took Arlin to dinner with my daughter and myself, and my daughter's going to be 16 in January. This was like about a year ago. And it took me all of a 1-minute restroom break to come back to know that Arlin had totally debunked any possible way of my daughter looking up to me and thinking that I'm actively engaged in this world, and productive and smart. We basically went into a path of, well, we really don't do much every day, Arlin and I. Yeah. And
I
thought
you were going to say you went out to dinner and he had to pay the bill because you forgot your wallet or something.
Oh, that happened also.
Yeah.
I went to the restroom for a longer period of time than when the check came. So thank you for that, Arlin.
And he hasn't let me talk to his daughter since. I don't understand.
But she still remembers him and thinks highly of him. So bad judge of character. Anyway, but let's talk about you, man. I mean, Arlin, you've been around for a long time.
I have been around a long time. I won't deny that.
And so, if you don't mind, and I don't want to make this an origin story of you, but how many years have you been in the business?
Well, I started the business back in 1985, so that would be we're pushing on 40 years.
Matt, what year were you born?
86. Feel old yet, Arlen?
I
What
have felt old for a while, my friend.
like what did the typical stack look like when it was chisels and rocks for building?
It was a physical stack, Matt. Like literally, you were stacking things.
Yeah, it was an Apple II Plus with a pair of 5 1/4 inch floppies and a green screen monitor on top of it. That was my stack.
Like I said, physically stacking
Physically
hardware.
stacked. Absolutely.
He was stacking the floppies as well, so everything was stacked. So okay, so you've been doing it for a while. You know, a couple years you've been in the business, and I do want to. You told me this story, and for those that don't know, with HTG, I just want to dive in that real quick. How did that even begin, and why?
Well, it began because in 1999, I bought into the whole idea that the Y2K event was going to be the greatest thing to ever happen in the IT industry. So I hired a dozen engineers the second half of 99 to get ready. And Y2K didn't come to Iowa at all. So by April of 2000, we were bleeding cash badly because I didn't have near enough work and I couldn't figure out what we were doing wrong. So reached out to a couple of peers across the state and asked them if they'd get together with us and have a conversation, and they agreed. And so the four companies met. We learned a lot that day, mostly that there was no Y2K action happening. And that really helped me know that I had to go back and I had to reduce staff. So we went from 36 to 24. The only time I've done a major layoff in my career, but it saved the company. And, had I not had the assurance from the other people in that room, I probably would have tried to drag it out for another 3 months and it could have easily ended our business.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Y2K. How exciting was that, right?
It wasn't.
Maybe we just fixed it too well.
Yeah, yeah. I remember. I don't know if you remember Arlen, but like I remember they were talking about hiring um, software developers or whatever they were called. I don't know if that was even the title at that point, but they were offering like $2,000 to $3,000 an hour to work in some cases. They were
Yeah.
so concerned with
Oh, the
that. And
world was going to come to an end.
yes,
Right.
satellites were going to fall from the sky for no reason and destroy things, and we were going to have no power. That it was literally it was shutting down.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember people being on call midnight. Like it was
yeah.
Oh
interesting.
yeah, my whole team was deployed at midnight on the 31st to be ready for the disaster that was going to happen.
Yeah, it was disastrous for people's paycheck for your EBITDA. It was disastrous.
Right. Exactly. That's right.
Okay, so how did HTG ensue from this then?
So we kept meeting after that first meeting and determined there was a lot of value there. And slowly over time, we created a group of a dozen companies. That was all I ever intended, was one group with 12 companies, and we were rolling along with that. When I went to events and I'd share kind of what we were doing, people would keep asking to join the group, and I'd keep telling them, no, that's all we're going to do is one group. I'll put you on a waiting list. And in 2006, I had 30 companies on a waiting list. So I decided, light bulb maybe went off in my brain that maybe there's an opportunity here. So I started another couple of groups. And then in 2007, I went to SMB Nation out in Redmond, Harry Brailsford's conference.
Mhm.
And he had me do a presentation in front of everybody. And I signed up 60 people that day that wanted to be in a peer group. And so then I had a whole nother problem, which was I was doing all the facilitation myself, and there was no way I could facilitate another 5 or 6 groups. So I immediately asked my leadership team to start facilitating along with their full-time job. And we grew quickly, and we went to 9 groups in 2007. We went to 18 groups in 2008, and things kind of got wild and crazy from there.
What is the actual mission and goal of the pair group?
Well, it's to help people plan, number one. So they need to plan their business and personal legacy, their life, their leadership, and their business. And once they get that identified, then the mission is to help them achieve success in those areas. So we want people to create what their vision of success looks like, and then we want the peer groups to come alongside and hold them accountable, which is the real problem most of us have as small business owners. We're not accountable to anybody except ourselves, and that's not enough. And we want to
Right.
get people across the finish line and help them get to achieve that vision of success.
So, what made your groups talk about personal and legacy planning? Right, most peer groups are only about business goals. Like, how did this come to be? I think that's one of the truly unique things about HTG and these groups.
Yeah, man. I mean, I was in a peer group in the late 90s that was completely financially focused. And, there were a couple of life events that people in the group had that, when they brought them up asking for help, the facilitator just said, "We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about EBITDA and your business." And, that didn't really sit well with me. At the end of the day, we all got to make money to live, but that's not the most important thing in our worlds. And as we started to do these peer groups purely accidentally, we decided to make sure that we focused on the things that really mattered. And I'm yet to talk to anybody as they're kind of winding down their life that says, "Wow, I wish I would have worked more hours. I wish I would have made another couple points of EBITDA." That's not the conversation. It's, I wish I would have spent time with my family, or, traveled more with my kids, or whatever. Life is what really matters, and legacy is the way that we keep people focused on life.
I
And
love
right, and
that.
just for anyone who hasn't gone down this road, you guys get deep into planning, not just
Oh,
like
yeah.
having lofty goals, but really what do you want to do, and getting the group members to answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, we really go deep because, I mean, you get one chance in life, right? And so every hour we don't have an intention behind what we do with it, we're piddling it away. And so we can't ever make more life. We cannot make more time. We can all go make more money. There's lots of ways to go make money, but you give up an hour of time, it's gone.
I love that, the intention part, because but I think people have a hard time defining what intent is to them, because we've been programmed
Hmm.
that intent means productivity in one direction only.
Yep. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, that's the mindset of an entrepreneur, right? Is, we're going to carry this thing on our back, we're going to do whatever it takes, and we don't realize that if we have that attitude, it's going to rob from our families and friends and the things that are most important to us. So, the purpose of the planning is really to get people to slow down and stop, and once they write it down, okay, that's a key to any kind of planning and goal setting, is you got to write it down, then you can be accountable. And that's what the peer groups do, is they call BS on people, because you got to come in and you got to defend your plan, right? Once a year we focus on each of those four areas, and we review your plan, and if you're not executing, people are going to ask you why.
yep. No, and
Yeah.
that's okay. So I have a question then. When you're defining the intent, right, and you're talking about these plannings, is this also, and I find this also with employees, not just the owners, because there's a lot of employees that have that entrepreneur spirit, but don't run the business, but they run their own book of business inside of it.
Yep.
So, and from talking to a lot of the partners that are evolved, the one thing I did learn that they it's funny, they all had the same common theme. One thing they said in particular was that they lacked communication abilities, and by communication, not they thought communication was like, hey, you're here to resolve X amount of tickets a day. Hey, you're here to grow this business. This is your day to day tasks. But really, the communication I'm referring to is the direction of where they wanted to go as a business, and what the role of that person was as well involved in this.
Hmm.
Yeah, legacy and life planning is not just for the owners. That's for sure. It
Right.
needs to be. It needs to filter throughout the entire organization. And the companies I see that really do it well, they're intentional about teaching their teams how to do those things. They give them time to spend time together talking about it, and to provide some accountability within their own staffs, so that people achieve those goals. It doesn't do any good to write them down if we don't execute them, right? So
Mhm.
that's the real key to planning, is you write it down, but then you execute, and you've got to have some system of being accountable, or you won't get it done. It's too easy to make excuses.
No, that is such a good point, though. It permeates the entire organization. I remember when my company, or the company I worked at, was in an evolved peer group, the entire org, from owner down to the person answering the phone, had personal and business goals, like, combined, right, with whoever they reported to. It was part of the meeting cadence. It was part of the understanding, and even as we got bigger, that stayed. It's just so important.
Well, happy employees make for happy customers, right? And so that's the beauty of owners that understand the value of helping their people find balance, and or at least manage the tension in their lives. We're never going to have work-life balance. That is a fallacy that does not exist.
I
It's
agree with
all
that.
about managing the tension, right? There's too
Yeah.
much work, there's too much life to fit in 24 hours. So we have to manage the tension, and a plan helps you because it gives you a reason to say no. If it's not in the plan, you got to say no. And if it's important enough that you believe you need to do it, then you change the plan and you put it in the plan. But especially in life, you got to say no to things. There's a lot of good things you can do with your time, but that's not the best always. And so you got to pick the best things and put those in your plan.
I love that. I think um, you're I agree with the work life balance thing, right? And it's not even that it's just a fallacy. I think it just needs to be redefined as to what it means to people, because it's perceived value to me. Because you watched when Google redefined what work experience should look like, right? And every other company was like, "Oh my God, look how amazing their office is! They do all this cool stuff." They created an environment where people wanted to be part of it, so they didn't notice a difference. Work life balance was they liked being there. So they were part of a value. It's about feeling valued as an employee, knowing you have a part. Come back to the communication part of owners to their employees. I think that's where you find it. So you don't pay attention. It becomes like you're happy being there. You have a common goal.
Yeah.
So and if you're all rowing the boat the same direction, you know what that is, and you feel good about that, and you stay on board. You don't worry about the life, because it's part of your life.
Right. Well, and I think communication is a big one, Sean, that we see, especially with legacy planning. It's amazing how little couples talk to each other, how little families communicate about legacy. You'd think that would be a topic that everybody would really focus in on and make sure they've got put together. But it's amazing to watch spouses in particular, the first time they hear about legacy planning. It's like, wow, don't you think maybe you should have included me in some of these plans? I'm kind of like half of the program here. But we don't talk about the important stuff, and that's why it's such a big part of it, is the communication and writing it down, and again sharing it with the people it impacts.
The most eye-opening thing, when I was in a peer group, was when we had to bring the status check-ins to our family and friends and hear what they thought was going on. That's a really powerful thing. I don't know anyone else who does that.
Yeah, having the scorecards where we're asking you to have your spouse and your kids rate how you're doing in terms of
Hmm.
the relationship. It's powerful. And we do the same thing with leadership, where we ask people to have their direct reports, give them a score in that area. So we really try to expand that communication portal. The score is not the driver, it's the communication to get to the score. When you see
Mhm.
that, one of the ones that a lot of people fail at is, how does not use or look at their phone during family meals. And we ask people to get rated 1 to 10, and almost all of them are, like 2 or less. Um,
-1.
but it opens the door for a communication about that, right? Why do you have to look at your phone while we're having dinner together? And MSPs will come up with some flippant answer that's really not a very good one. And if they slow down and think about it, they'll be willing to put their phone aside and not let it interrupt the family time. We just got to make good choices, and planning can help us get there.
So I feel that, or I even noticed, even my own personally, you get more. Well, you take things for granted as to what's taking place in front of you with your family and your business, right? Um,
Yep,
Mhm.
it's status quo, same old, right? And then second, you end up becoming more reactive in your day to day because there's no common goal or mission in the end for anybody. I once had a friend that she would always say, "I need something to look forward to,"
mm,
and I didn't realize what that was. I was like, "You just got back from vacation. Stop crying." But meanwhile, there's validity in that because something to look forward to requires you to have the conversation of where are we going together,
Yeah.
or as a group or a collective, like that we're working towards. Because something to look forward to doesn't mean a vacation. It could be a benchmark of some sort.
absolutely. You know, I, one of the things that's become very apparent to me over the years is that employees, very few employees come to work thinking about how they can screw up that day or, do something that's destructive to the company. I mean, employees don't come that way. The problem is they don't know what they're supposed to do necessarily. They haven't been communicated with what that vision is and what we're trying to accomplish together. And when you don't know, you start making stuff up. And that's where a lot of times owners kind of fall short is they don't communicate clearly what the mission is, what we're trying to accomplish, where people fit in so that they know what they can do to help us get there. Communication is really probably the biggest challenge that we all face in every aspect of our life, whether it's, around our legacy or our life planning or our leadership or what we're trying to do in our business. People want to help us be successful. We just got to help them understand what it is, what that really means.
Absolutely.
Except Sean, of course, who walks in wondering how I can throw a wrench into things.
Yes.
Wrenches have a place, right?
Thank you, Arlen. You know
Wrenches
what,
have a
Matt?
place.
You're probably looking at the same person as me in that regard, which is Arlen, because he throws wrenches in everything we talk about all the
He
time. So
does in a good
Grenades.
way.
Grenades is what I'm told.
yeah, see, he's already one up me. He went up you
Oh,
with the wrench.
did you coin? I used to hear people say that. Did you coin that around the Evolve,
I
Arlen?
didn't
I used to
coin
hear
it. My team coined it.
that was a
Funny.
common theme around my office. I'm not going to
Yeah,
throw grenades into things.
yeah. Funny story. My leadership team decided that I was too disruptive when we had team meetings. So they came up with this concept that once we had written our annual plan for what we were going to do, I only got 3 mulligans for the year, right? So there were 3 things I could bring up in the next 12 months that were outside of the plan that I had to feel were important enough that we would redo our plan to include them. And, while that seemed like a little bit corny at the time, it really changed the way that I led the group. I was the guy that would go to an event and come back with a list of 25 things that we were going to do. I knew that 23 of them we weren't going to do, but I threw them out there, just for conversation. What I learned was that some people got pretty excited about all that stuff that was going to be on their plate all of a sudden. I never had any intention of that being reality. It was just an idea I wanted to throw out there. But my team was clear that don't do that. Don't come in here and just throw out ideas because some of us don't necessarily know which ones we're supposed to do and which ones we're not. You don't communicate clearly what the expectations are. So I had to change my ways, and it really did help the effectiveness of our team, and it made them a lot more comfortable. And they weren't afraid when I went away to an event to come back and disrupt everything.
Yeah, and
I
I'm
can
assuming,
appreciate
Arlen, that many of the ideas that you ultimately discarded were good ideas, right? That you had
Sure.
to have some, right, some filter on this. That even if this would be an awesome thing, we just don't have the capacity to do it right now.
Or a budget like Sean gets. I had a limited budget. I had to work within it, and I couldn't necessarily resource everything I thought was important.
Budget's important. You're right, Arlen. And to have such a big budget, I don't know what to even do. Like I'm like, Scrooge McDuck, and taking dives into the gold pile that I have of budget. It's amazing. I swim through that. But anyway, yeah. Back to reality. I love the concept. I love that three mulligan piece because for me, I was the entrepreneur with entrepreneurs. So they brought me in to help keep them in check and align because somebody had to be able to fight the fight with them, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, they may be all phenomenal ideas, but as a collective, they're all bad ideas because there's just too much to do and nobody can do them.
Mhm.
So you take away the grenade, you've literally just dropped an atomic bomb on your business, perhaps because you're shifting. And one thing you see, and I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that MSP owners and vendor owners for startups or small to medium size or even enterprise experience the same challenges in this case. I don't know how many times I've heard the line, "We're going to throw the noodles at the wall and see what sticks." Right? That's not. I don't like that. Hey,
No.
if you have the luxury of doing that on the side, doesn't affect the business. Go ahead and do so. If you have a task unit that can go throw stuff against the wall all day and see what happens, great. Go ahead and do that, but do not let it affect the core business.
So very true. We have, we have to grow up as leaders and recognize that people follow us and they'll
Mhm.
follow us off a cliff if we're not careful ourselves. So we've got to really be intentional about how we look at things. It's why EOS and Stratop and these other planning systems are so important. It kind of
Yep.
put us in a little bit of a box. And as an entrepreneur, I never liked being put in a box, but I have to be put in a box. I'm dangerous outside of the box.
So how do you triage the ideas, right? You come back from an event and you literally have 25, 30 ideas that seem fantastic, right? How do you pick only a couple out of that? Because all of them seem like things you want to do.
Well, you go back to the plan, right? If it aligns with the plan, if it can enhance the plan, if it fits, then that's a step in the right direction. If it's something totally out and clearly in the left field, you got to really ask yourself, is this really important enough? I'm willing to disrupt what we're doing to bring this into the program. So it takes some discipline. You need a trusted person that you can have conversation with, and that's another value peer groups can deliver. It's a great place to kind of throw ideas out. Your peers have seen your plans. They know what you're trying to accomplish, and if you throw out something that's outside of that box, they ought to throw the flag and say, "Hey, what are you thinking about here? This isn't part of your plan. You need to use some discipline and hold on to it." The Disney brothers, Roy and Walt, had come to an agreement where Walt was the idea guy, right? And Roy was the poor guy that was supposed to implement all this stuff. And the rule was that Walt had a drawer in his desk where he could put all of his new ideas, but he could not pull them out and expose the team to them until he and Roy had that conversation, and Roy
Mhm.
could assure him they had the resources to actually execute. And that's the kind of discipline we've got to have. We've got to really contain our excitement and our entrepreneurial mindsets until we've got the right resources and it fits into the plans that we're trying to accomplish.
I
You know what
think
this almost reminds me of? Like, you remember, Sean, there used to be Pandora where you made your own internet radio stations and you had to be very disciplined to say, I love this song and it doesn't fit the station.
it still
Like,
exists.
I'm
I'm
kind of
using it
hearing
now.
that.
I'm using it now, Pandora. It still exists.
Still around? I thought we all switched to Spotify by now.
I can't because I made great playlists, Matt. I'm still on them. I It's still there. That's like I have Spotify too, but I just Pandora. I s- I curated this for the last 15 years, man. I can't take it away now. I have so many good stations.
It really does remind me of that, though, right? You hear a song, I love this song, but I'm trying to make a station of like, 90s alternative or whatever, and it doesn't
Yep.
fit that. You got to say no to it.
Yep. Well, you start thumbs and up it, right? You thumb up it, and all of a sudden now it's part of that playlist, and now you've ruined your playlist.
Yeah.
And I agree. So and even coming back to what you said about you touched on two things that I feel like are connected. You said you got to have that right hand person to talk to bounce it off of to say, hold up, we're not ready yet, or we are. But then you also mentioned like EOS stuff, right? Which I think that's if your business, let's say you don't have the right hand person to do this with, right? You can't. That's where I think EOS needs to be applied and followed, and that's a place that you can introduce. You can bake it into your EOS meeting plan, and get the group their feedback on it before, because EOS is your executives. They're the ones that are going to have to be. They're all part of making sure it all works and that it gets executed on right in the proper way. They're all affected by typically by your ideas.
Yep. And systems like EOS provide discipline. That's really the big value, right? And the
Mhm.
opportunity to communicate clearly. And so, I'm a big believer in using a planning system to help make sure that you execute consistently and with discipline over time.
I love that. I love that.
And a planning system, right? It's not necessarily saying EOS is the right one or whatever works for you. It's just having some kind of system in place to hold you accountable as opposed to any particular one. Or are you saying EOS is the best one?
No, I'm a big believer in Stratop. I know a lot of partners that use Gazelles. From Vern Harnish. Strategizer is another good one. I mean, there's a bunch of good ones out there that will work if you actually follow them. Where people go off the tracks is that they think they can fix these planning systems, which are tried, tested, and have been around a long time. But I can do it better. I got my own little tweaks for how I'm going to do EOS. Don't do that. Just do EOS the way EOS is made to operate, and
Yep.
it will serve you well.
It's the discipline part you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And it's uh, when I was in the army, one thing that I learned that they excelled at is their ability to facilitate a mission. To talk about from if you've ever watched any military movie, even like if you watch Band of Brothers, it shows how they talk and how they stay in structure with the same thing when they talk about it, right? Everybody gets on board. They all agree that it can happen, and this is how it's going to happen. And the the really what you're being trained on, you already know how to do your job typically, right? When you go on a mission, they say this is the mission, we're going here to do this. The only adjustments is the contingencies, and the contingencies exist for a reason if things should fail. There's a contingency to the contingency to the contingency, but those are already pre-planned, and you actually go in that order. You don't you don't circumvent, you don't adjust. You're going this direction until proven otherwise, and then contingency says go this way. We all go that way. We all know.
You don't just freestyle it.
Only when I'm dancing, Arlen. Only when I'm dancing.
So this applies to engineers too, right? And technical people. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at some architecture diagram or some deployment guide or something like that and said, man, I know how to do this better. And inevitably 6 months later, I come back and do it exactly the way the guide said to, right? Follow the initial plan. And there's a reason that it was written that way to begin with. Freestyling may be good if you're doing R&D, developing a new product. Not so good if you're trying to implement something that somebody else wrote, right? Follow the guide.
And even with R&D, it's pretty good to have a plan, actually. So, planning is something that we know we never have time for. We don't think it's that important, but it is that important, and we need to make time to do it.
I would agree. Going back to the military, even everybody knows their job, but everybody's job is it can only happen if the other person does their job, right? So
Yeah.
you do have overlap. I feel like a lot of businesses, people that work within the business and entrepreneurs specifically, because they're the ones that set the tone, don't realize the domino effect that takes place when you think it's just a small tweak. That ripple effect is a real thing, right? Um, and they don't stop to think about how's it going to affect each and every position or deliverable or department within the company, which in return affects every end user that you support too.
Yeah. Right. We're talking about sports. It's like a receiver changing the route mid route and the QB throwing where he's supposed to be.
Looks familiar. I think the Jets constantly.
Well, they're usually throwing to the other team. So you at least want to start with, targeting your own jersey.
That's truer words than ever been said, Matt. Thank you for that. Words of wisdom. I feel like you missed your calling.
Well, they
It's
get
like,
confused. Like if they play the Eagles, they get confused of which shade of green to throw to.
that's yeah. It's almost like the movie Better Off Dead when he's competing on the going down the hill, and she was like, "What's your advice? Go down the hill really fast. If something gets in your way, move." Like that's how I just felt that was. Oh God. Okay, so we have a couple minutes left here. I do just want to touch base on a couple, just one or two things here. You're back to the personal side of things, right? You do have, I mean, I know part of your family, right? I know your direct family because they're all around us. I mean, your children are there with us in meetings. So I
Yes,
know.
they are. Yes, they are.
Yes, they. So how did you make? And I think this is a great topic, a great point that man, we can go on forever about it because most small business owners have their family work with them. So how do you maintain that balance? How do you separate it? Because there is that taken for granted thing, right?
Oh yeah. Well, it's not easy, right? One of the things I did right, which I served us well, is I told the kids they couldn't come back to work for me until they had worked somewhere else first. So
I like
you
that.
know, when Pete graduated, he went to work for Pioneer Hybrids, and then they were acquired by DuPont, and he got trained by the best trainers in the world around a lot of systems that DuPont used, and so he got experience that was invaluable and has been invaluable to us. Lori went to work teaching first grade and spent 5 years doing that, and then she went and did some time in China. But both of them had great experiences outside of the technology world, and I wasn't sure they would come back at all. But they both came back the same year, actually, in 2012. So they were out for 7 to 10 years in the workplace before they came back to us, and so that was a good thing. They got exposed. Dad wasn't necessarily as terrible of a boss as they thought he was, and so when they came back, they were ready to really engage as professionals and not my kids. And even to this day, they have plenty of ideas for how I should be doing things differently or better. And they're usually right. That's the reality, Sean. You should listen to your daughter a little more. If I coach her enough, she can really help you. Um, but
Thanks, Arlen. Appreciate
you know,
that.
we try to have rules about not bringing business to the Thanksgiving table. And again,
Mhm.
it's discipline, right? And the way we deal with that is we make sure that there's time to have those conversations outside of family time, and because we need to have them, but you got
Yep.
to really just put some boundaries in place and be disciplined about following those things. And you know, there'll be times where I'll say something to Lori or Pete, when I shouldn't be saying anything, and the hand goes up and they say, "Not now. We can talk about it later, but we're not going to talk about it now." And so, it can be done. Uh, it's a great joy to have them involved, but there are trade-offs, and you got to learn to deal with those.
Uh, yeah. When I first met Pete and we were talking, I obviously saw his last name, and then he kept saying about Arlen. And I'm like, is he like your uncle maybe or something? He's not your dad. Like I thought, like he's like, why do you keep calling him Arlen? And I was like, I can't. It was uncomfortable because I couldn't ask him. I could be like, what is he to you? So I asked somebody else. They're like, yeah, it's his dad. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah. So at least he knows the separation of the professional to the
Yep.
personal.
Yeah.
Because there is something to be said whenever if I'm sitting there saying my dad said,
Right.
it doesn't become that's
Yeah.
oh your dad, that's great, great guy, sure. I love it though. That's
Yeah.
so
No, they both call me by my first name, and
no.
they try to keep it professional, and sometimes it backfires and people come to them wanting to get something to me, but in general, it works pretty well.
I love that. And you also have your grandchildren.
Absolutely.
How many do you have?
That's the only reason you have kids, actually, is to get grandkids.
I would agree with that at this point, dude. I like them better than my kids.
Yeah.
They like me better. That's why.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, all the things you wish you would have got from your kids, you can get from your grandkids.
Exactly. Like I walk in the room, it's me. Their parents don't matter.
That's right.
I win.
And you know, when you get to spend time with them, you know, it's great. You can treat them however you want to because you know you're going to be going home at some point and they'll be staying behind.
That is the best part is you're handing them back. It's
Yep.
like being on a timeshare condo. You can leave because the cleaning company's going to come clean. You don't have to worry about it.
All right, I'm going to keep us on time track.
Yes.
So in the couple of minutes we have left, Arlen, we always end the show with one question, and it can be free form based on everything we've talked about. What is one habit that somebody listening or watching this should start doing and or stop doing to improve their business, improve their personal work-life balance, improve anything? What's your advice? Habit that they should start or stop or both?
Well, I think you know, for me, for sure, I need to read more. I need to continue to learn. You know, even as an old guy that's almost 69 years old, there's a whole lot of stuff I don't know. And you know, I've got to continue to take in new information, keep up. You know, the generational changes are something that I'm trying to learn more and more about. You know, you young guys are kind of wired in a different way. Um, so, you know, to me, it's about being a continual learner. And I know over time I've kind of drifted away from maybe putting as much effort into constantly upgrading my education about the industry, but about life in general, right? Uh, every book I read doesn't have to be about business, although that's where I tend to spend most of my time. But you know, there's so many ways now with podcasts and all kinds of ways to take in info, and so that's the discipline I'm trying to work on. The habit I want to build is learn, learn, learn. What I
I
need to stop doing is wasting time because I'm going to run out, and I know that. And so, you know, it's really I've got to be intentional about every minute, and you know, not sit there and let that control me, but to realize that you know the minute I just spent, I'm not going to get another shot at. There are no do overs when it comes to time, and so I want to be very intentional about how I use it.
I love that. But I think it's important to say, come back to the intentional, it's subjective to what you consider, what you find value in as a person.
Absolutely.
You know, if it's actually sitting there doing absolutely nothing for 1 hour and that's the intent, then you should do that. You know, unplug, sit there, meditate, whatever it is you want to do, but be intentional so you get value out of it.
Well, that's been one of my big learnings this year. You know, when I had a knee injury happen in June, and I couldn't do anything literally. And I learned the power of reflection. You know, I was always going 100 miles an hour. And I never really slowed down to reflect on what I had just experienced or you know what I should have learned. You know, with when I couldn't move basically, and I was laid up. You know, I had a lot of time to think and reflect and have some solitude, which has been a new thing for me, but it's really kind of nice. You learn a lot when you just slow down and look back. And so I've been doing a lot of that, and that's been helpful.
That's awesome. All right. So, Matt, what else we have?
I think that's it. I want to thank Arlen for coming on. This has been a fantastic conversation and some new insights and things that even I didn't know after working with you, Arlen.
Oh, I'm full of surprises. There's no doubt about that. But you know, it is a lot of fun to work with you guys, and we got a great team on the IT Nation team, and you know, I wake up every day excited to see what I'm going to learn today.
Absolutely. Arlen, thank you. This was great. Yeah, somehow every time I talk to you, you still have other stories, but I guess that's due to you being in business for longer than Matt's been
Long
alive.
time. Yeah.
So yes, for those of you who watch this, appreciate you watching. Look forward to the next few episodes. We're going to try to put these out regularly, more higher frequency than before. There's a lot of people in the community that we want to get information from and get it out to you all. But Matt, thank you for bringing on to you with you. I look forward to doing this for the next umpteen days until you fire me from it. Um, but Arlen, again, thanks, man. Otherwise, until next time, I'll